Welcome to the AEN Stories channel.
I used to think the most dangerous thing about guarding a gated community was the HOA newsletter. Those folks could write a threat in pastel font. Please ensure your hedges meet high guidelines. Translation: cut the shrubs or we'll fine you into a second job. I'm Tony Ramirez, 35, 6'2" and change, built like the walking version of a safe you regret trying to lift. I ran the night shift at Regency Oaks, a coastal slice of paradise with stucco houses, imported palms, and more cameras than a Vegas casino. Security work is a lot of standing, watching, and politely telling very confident people that their golf cart is an illegal vehicle for the highway. My routine was simple. I checked the perimeter, waved the regulars through, logged every delivery, and kept an eye on the community boards where neighbors posted videos of raccoons like they were Bigfoot. My wife Tiffany said I was born for this job. "You're a lighthouse," she told me once, painting her nails at the kitchen island. Tall, calm, dependable. You see everything. I liked that. A man can live a long time on a compliment. Then the thefts started. The first call came from a townhouse with the kind of open floor plan that makes you whisper. Mrs. Larrabee claimed a tennis bracelet had vanished from her jewelry drawer. No sign of forced entry. No footprints. No broken anything. Just gone. She cried into a tissue that looked more expensive than my shoes. I helped her pull up camera footage. The hallway cam had a smudge at the exact wrong time. Whoever did it knew where to look. The second call came 2 nights later. A Cartier watch. Different street, same layout of my contractor used the word bespoke twice before lunch. Same story too. No forced entry. Hall camera fizzled during the key window. Residents murmured about the inside angle. I did the checklist, called it in, wrote the report, and stared at the screen until pixels felt like soup. The third call lit the powder. This time it was a set of earrings. Pear-shaped. So were the accusations. The HOA president, a retired surgeon named Brad with a haircut that said I never met a part I didn't like, called an emergency meeting in the clubhouse. I showed up in uniform with my log books. Brad did not offer me a seat. "Let's be candid," he said, palms spread like a TED Talk. "Who has the best vantage point on our homes and habits?" He didn't look at the roofers or the gardeners or the realtors. He looked at me. "Who sees every license plate, every service van, every visitor?" "The cameras," I said, channeling lighthouse energy. "The cameras see everything." A brittle laugh went around the room. "Tony," Brad said, like my name was a dog toy he wanted me to drop, "you have access to every feed. Every code. Every gate." I had access, sure. I also had a record cleaner than the stainless steel kitchens I checked at 2 a.m. I defended myself without raising my voice because loud is easy and quiet is harder. I offered to share my schedule, my GPS logs, the whole thing. I asked for patience, for the police to finish their work. That got me 4 days. On day 5, someone put up a thread on the residents app. A blurry photo of me, alone in the guard booth, labeled Foxy Watchman. The comments section did the rest. I learned I smiled too much for night shift, which is apparently suspicious. Another neighbor mentioned I could easily slip past the gate because he's built like a ninja, a sentence that made me wonder if anyone had ever met a ninja. On day 6, management called me in. The property manager, a young guy named Connor who wore loafers with no socks like his ankles had air rights, slid a folder across the desk. "Tony, we're suspending you pending investigation." "Suspend me," I said, doing my level best to be a person and not a freight train, "but at least tell me you don't believe this." He couldn't meet my eyes. "We have to look at optics." "Optics," I repeated, because sometimes a word deserves to be said twice so it knows what it did. I turned in my key fob. It beeped goodbye like a microwave. When I walked out of the office, I passed 2 neighbors on the sidewalk. People I had helped jump their cars and carried groceries for. They looked at their phones. One of them spit on the ground. Maybe he missed. I'm not a court of law. It landed close enough to graze my pride. At home, Tiffany had opinions. She always did. She wore a satin robe and the kind of expression that can slice bread. "You're kidding," she said. They fired you? After all your nights and weekends and every holiday party where you watched people pretend not to check each other's bathrooms for dust? Suspended, I said. They'll call it due process. She paced the kitchen like a hurricane in heels. This happens because you're too nice, she said. You make it easy for people to push you. If they push me, they break a nail. People don't push me. People didn't push Tiffany. They took direction. She sold luxury condos for a living and could talk granite into refinancing. She kissed my cheek, told me to sit, and poured coffee. I drank. The mug said Security Dad because apparently a store somewhere had decided that was a thing. We hadn't gotten around to the dad part yet. We were waiting for the right time, the right money, the right breath of air. Later that afternoon, a detective knocked on the door. I knew him. Everyone did. Detective Kyle McMullen, badge polished, jawline that won awards. He had a smile like a crisp collar. He'd been the one assigned to the thefts. He stepped into our entryway with the comfort of a man who expects deposits of admiration. "Tony," he said, giving my shoulder a masculine tap that teetered into a pat. "Tiffany." He nodded at her like they shared a secret handshake only faces knew. My skin prickled. He glanced around the living room like he was rating it on a home show. "Nice place." "We rent," Tiffany said, with a laugh that was light and something else underneath. Detective McMullen laid out standard questions, pen ready. Where was I on the nights of the thefts? Had I noticed anything strange? Did I ever go inside residents' homes off duty? No, yes, only when asked to check something while on a call. He flipped a page, nodded, and put his pen away. "We're following up on multiple angles," he said. "These things get messy before they get clean." He looked at Tiffany again when he said clean. Maybe I imagined it. Maybe my pride wanted a fight. After he left, Tiffany stood at the window and watched him walk to his car. She had that faraway look she used when she thought about possibilities. Tiffany believed in ladder climbing. She believed in shortcuts too. "He's very professional," she said, without turning. "He knows his way around our kitchen for a man who's visited twice," I said. She flicked the blinds shut. The next week was a blur of job sites rejected and job boards stalked. I lifted weights in the garage until my arms trembled, because if you can't lift your life you lift something. I called my mother and lied about how I felt. I called my father and listened to weather reports. In the evenings, Tiffany scheduled girls' nights and charity meetings, anything to be out among people. She said she couldn't stand the way the house felt, like it had a temporary sign on it. One late Wednesday, I drove by the Regency Oaks gate. Habit is a magnet. I parked under a streetlight and watched the booth where my thermos once lived. A new guard sat in my chair. He had a neck tattoo of something winged and an aura that said he knew every flavor of energy drink. He looked bored. The boredom made me ache. A white Mercedes rolled up to the gate. I recognized the driver. Detective McMullen. He flashed a badge. The new guard waved him through. No questions. No log. I watched him drive in like it was his name on the sign. I didn't love that. I know how the playbook works. Detectives come and go. They often cut corners to build cases. This felt more like he lived there. When your life shrinks, the smallest details get larger. The detective's visits. The hush in a conversation. The way Tiffany's phone screen lit her face after midnight. I told myself stories about how reasonable everything would look in the morning. The morning forgot to show up. On Friday, management made it official. Termination. No cause listed except the evergreen violation of trust. I returned the last of my gear, including the yellow vest everyone joked made me look like a human highlighter. Connor shook my hand in a way that insulated his palms from responsibility. I drove home with my vest folded on the passenger seat like a shed skin. By Saturday, the rumor mill had upgraded me from possible thief to inside man. A neighbor posted a photo of a large shadow near a backyard gate and circled it with the caption "Tony." My phone pinged until I put it in a drawer. When I took out the trash, a woman with a golden doodle walked past and pulled her dog close like I was a coyote. The dog tried to lick my hand. I let him. That afternoon, Detective McMullen showed up again. No knock. He texted Tiffany from the driveway and she opened the door like she had been waiting. He strolled in with a bakery box and a smile. "Thought you could use some lemon bars," he said. "From that place near the station." "Bless you," Tiffany said, taking the box like it was a bouquet. I stood. He saw me and did that pleasant surprise thing actors learn in handsome school. "Tony." "Hey. I didn't want to bother you." "You didn't," I said. "You just used your keyless charm to enter my home." Tiffany gave me a look. The one that meant not now. She offered McMullen a plate. He declined, then asked if he could chat with her alone about some community intel. My ears warmed. I said I'd be in the garage. He said, "Appreciate you, big guy," which made me want to lift the house. In the garage, I stared at my tools. 2 drills, a socket set, a ladder that has seen more skylights than most birds, a field kit for camera installation. I'd done a dozen side gigs for neighbors who wanted their ring connected without yelling at a PDF. I had saved enough to buy a second-hand van with no windows. I'd been meaning to turn those gigs into something official. Meaning is cheap until it isn't. I opened the field kit and touched the cables like rosary beads. Something kicked in my brain. McMullen was too comfortable here, too smooth with the gate, too friendly with my wife. The thefts had a signature. No forced entry. Hall cams conveniently compromised. If you wanted to bypass security without leaving a mess, you'd need 2 things: knowledge of the system and a way to blind the eyes that watch you. A man who investigates cameras learns their blind spots. A man who flirts learns people's blind spots too. I decided to stop feeling and start watching. That night, while Tiffany slept on the couch with a blanket and a reality show murmuring, I set up an extra camera above the kitchen doorway angled to catch the foyer. I bought it months ago for a client who ghosted me. The lens was a button, the body a whisper. I wired the feed to my laptop and hid the camera behind our framed family rules sign. Rule number 1, be honest. The irony did a little jazz routine in my head. I also installed a tracker app on the old iPad we used as a recipe book. Tiffany liked to pull it up for Pinterest salads. I positioned it so that if someone walked through the front door again with a box of lemon bars, I'd have a timestamp to match with gate logs I could still access from a back door nobody remembered to close. Lighthouse energy. I see everything. 2 nights later, while rinsing dishes, I watched McMullen's Mercedes glide through the gate again on my laptop screen. No record in the log. He didn't flash a badge this time. He waved. The tattooed guard waved back like they'd swapped gym tips. I glanced at the living room. Tiffany's phone chimed. She stood, changed her tea, checked her lipstick in the microwave reflection. That's a move every spouse knows. It's a line on the graph. He arrived 15 minutes later. The doorbell never rang. The door opened. Tiffany walked into the foyer with a smile I didn't recognize. Not happy. Not scared. The smile you make when you know your joke will land and maybe get you a discount on consequences. They didn't kiss. Not right then. He handed her a small velvet box. She opened it, gasped. She hugged him, quick and close. He whispered in her ear. The mic didn't catch it. Her fingers danced to the box like she was warming them on a fire. Neighbors would say later that they'd seen Tiffany at parties wearing a new pendant with an unusual sparkle. They'd say she deserved nice things because she worked so hard. They'd ask where she found it. She'd shrug and call it a good deal. Maybe she believed it. Maybe she told herself gifts come in all shapes and not all of them require permission slips. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed next to her and tried to slow my heart with numbers. I counted cameras instead of sheep. I told myself to wait, to collect, to let facts stack up like coins. The morning arrived an hour late. Over the next week, 3 more items went missing. A brooch, a bracelet, a vintage ring with a boring warranty and exciting accents. Each time, McMullen showed up at our door with a bakery box or a paper bag, stayed 20 minutes, and left. Once he asked me to step into the backyard so he could get Tiffany's read on something sensitive. I stood by the grill and watched the reflection in the sliding door. I saw him touch her wrist where a new bracelet glowed. I watched her not pull away. My stomach went cold, the kind of cold you feel when the ocean pulls you out and you realize you can't see the shore. I confronted her on a Tuesday. I picked Tuesday because it felt neutral. Not heavy like Sunday or performative like Friday. I poured coffee and said, "Calm, are you seeing him?" She blinked, fast. "Who?" "McMullen." She didn't answer for a long moment. That's the thing about silence. It either tells the truth or it gives birth to it. She looked down at her wrist, then at the sink. "It's complicated," she said. "It's theft," I said. "Don't be dramatic," she replied, and the words stood in the air like tiny lawyers. I showed her the footage. I didn't want to. No sane person wants to play the game show where all the prizes are knives. She watched. Her face moved through expressions like weather across a lake. She put a hand to her mouth when she saw the velvet box. She didn't cry. Tiffany never cried unless it contributed to a result. "He said he was investigating," she said. "He was," I said. "Investigating how good our foyer looks. Investigating your taste in jewelry." She folded her arms. "Maybe I like someone paying attention." "I pay attention," I said, feeling the heat climb up my neck. "I pay attention all night. To cameras and cars and people who think my job is to be invisible." She raised an eyebrow. "You chose that job." "No," I said, surprised by my own voice. "I chose to protect people. I didn't choose to be the easiest person in the room to blame when something goes wrong." She looked at the screen again. "What do you want to do?" "I want to be right," I said. "And I want to be kind. Right now those aren't friends. So I'll settle for evidence." I didn't leave. I didn't yell. I went back to the garage and planned. My plan had 3 parts: catch him entering a house, catch him leaving, catch him handing off. The handoff was key. If he was stealing for Tiffany, he'd need to give her the goods. That was the moment you could anchor a whole case to. I started mapping his patterns. He liked late evenings on Tuesdays and Thursdays. He drove the same route down Magnolia, turned on Palmetto, cut around the fountain with the bronze herons everyone pretended to love. He preferred the houses with older couples who didn't arm their systems because they were always around. He had a knack for the side gates with weak latches. He knew exactly where the hallway cams lived and how to blind them with a swipe of electrical tape. I learned his habits like a rival learns a fighter's tell. I enlisted exactly one friend. His name is Benny. We grew up together playing football and fixing lawnmowers for neighbors to pay for cleats. Benny runs a landscaping crew that cuts Regency Oaks green into symmetrical submission. He knows every driveway slope in that place. He lets me borrow a ladder sometimes and calls me Rem even though I retired my helmet 11 years ago. "Ram," he said when I told him my theory, "you trying to put a badge on that bicep?" "I'm trying to stop being stupid," I said. He grinned. "Then I'm in." The next Thursday, I set 2 extra cameras. One across from the Pattersons' tutor, disguised as a birdhouse. Another near the service path behind the Delgado's stucco palace where the hedges grow tall enough to hide a parade. Both fed to my laptop in the van. Benny parked the van near the fountain with a magnet sign that reads Suncoast Pool Leak Detection, which sounds legit because it is the name of a company that definitely exists in 3 different strip malls. At 9:16, a familiar Mercedes nosed past the gate. At 9:22, it passed the fountain. At 9:25, it idled under a jacaranda near the Pattersons. The birdhouse cam caught McMullen stepping out in a windbreaker and baseball cap. Not a hoodie. Detectives don't do hoodies. He slipped through the Pattersons' side gate like he was walking into his own kitchen. 3 minutes later he exited the same way with his hands in his pockets and a man's posture when he's carrying something expensive and doesn't want to jingle. He didn't go to his car. He cut along the service path behind the Delgados and disappeared near the bend that leads to our street. The second cam picked him up rounding the hedge by our backyard. I watched him jog across our grass like a childhood friend who had borrowed this route since bikes were freedom. He reached our back door. He knocked a little tune I recognized. Tiffany opened. He smiled a smile, the one like a crisp collar. He handed her a velvet pouch. They didn't kiss. He leaned in. She leaned in. They lingered. Benny watched the screen and muttered something that ended with "man." "I'm going to throw up later," I said. Right now we finished the job. We hit record from 3 angles. I screenshotted the timeline, annotated the map, pulled the gate log from the backdoor system like a magician producing a rabbit who has paperwork. I called a number I never expected to call. The property manager. Connor answered on the second ring. "Tony?" "Hey, pal," I said. "How's the ankle breeze?" He sighed. "What do you want?" "Your access to the clubhouse camera network," I said. "And a favor you'll pretend you don't owe me." He resisted for 2 seconds and then remembered all the times I had covered for him when he forgot to schedule overnights. He coughed up a temporary login. I pulled footage from the clubhouse parking lot, which, because the HOA loves accountability, watches the road out to Magnolia. I now had McMullen's car entering without a log, my hidden cams catching him between properties, and the handoff at my back door. I compiled it into a neat package with arrows and timestamps because judges like arrows and timestamps almost as much as they like politeness. Then I called the police. Not McMullen. I asked for his supervisor. I did not breathe during the hold music. Sergeant Wilkes answered. He has a voice like an engine that prefers idling. I told him what I had. I offered to bring it in. He told me to sit tight. He said a team would come by. I hung up and felt 10 years older and a kind of young all at once. Tiffany came into the garage not long after, still holding the velvet pouch. She stopped when she saw my face. "What did you do?" she asked. "What I should have done a month ago," I said. Her mouth hardened. "You just signed your own unemployment line, Tony." "I already stood in it," I said. "You're throwing your life away," she said, voice sharp. "For what? To be right? To be a hero? Did you want to be a cop so bad you had to cosplay it in a garage?" "I wanted to be your husband," I said, the words tasting like metal. "Turns out I was a prop." She scoffed. "You think you can make it without me?" I didn't answer. Not because I didn't have one. Because the answer needed witnesses. The officers arrived 20 minutes later. 2 uniforms, 1 plainclothes with a badge on a belt. They were careful. They were courteous. They took my laptop and my statement and the velvet pouch from Tiffany's hand. She didn't resist. She crossed her arms and stared at a stain on the concrete like it had wronged her. When they left, the house felt hollow and loud. We stood in the kitchen with the hum of the refrigerator and a clock that learned to shout. The arrest happened fast. Quicker than I thought possible. They nabbed McMullen near the fountain, which felt poetic. He had a bag in the passenger seat. The bag contained 3 items reported missing. He had explanations. Detectives always do. They sounded like sweaters stretched beyond repair. Word got out within the hour. Regency Oaks discovered a new sport, relief with a side of guilt. The app thread changed from Foxy Watchman to Hero Guard exonerated. The font stayed pastel. The tone did not. By nightfall, my phone was a slot machine of apologies. Brad, the HOA president, called 4 times and texted 6. Connor wrote an email that used deeply regret twice and optics not at all. My mother cried. My father called and said nothing for a full minute and then said, "Mijo," which is a magic trick of a word. Benny sent a video of himself grilling an enormous steak and captioned it, "This is you." I didn't ask questions. The next morning, Regency Oaks held a meeting in the clubhouse. Not emergency this time. Just very urgent. The room was full of people who knew me too well when they needed me and not at all when they didn't. Brad stood at the front and cleared his throat like an orchestra. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "we owe a collective apology to Mr. Ramirez for the unfounded suspicion and hasty actions that—" I raised a hand. "You don't need to perform penance in a monologue," I said. "Just fix your gates. Fix your process. Maybe fix your hearts." A murmur. Some laughs. Some shame. The kind that comes with knowing you spit near a man's foot when your dog was trying to kiss his hand. Brad nodded. "We have reinstated Tony effective immediately with back pay and a bonus for his initiative in this investigation. We would like him to return to his post tonight." I looked at the faces. Some hopeful. Some embarrassed. Tiffany sat in the second row, arms folded, chin set. Her expression said she had bets placed on the outcome. I thought about the booth. My thermos. The new kid with the energy drinks. The lighthouse job and how I loved it until it loved me back the way a hungry cat loves your hand. I also thought about the van in my driveway and the logo I had sketched on a napkin at 3 a.m. Ramirez Protective. Clean lines. Blue letters. A little shield that didn't look cheesy. I thought about all the side gigs, the camera installs, the way neighbors had whispered for help. I thought about standing in that booth forever, waving people who would always see me as a yellow vest with a face. I said, "Thank you." Brad smiled in that way that says the script is going well. Then Tiffany stood. Her voice cut through the room like a clarinet you didn't see coming. "Without me you are nothing." Heads turned. A man coughed. Somewhere a chair squeaked like it wanted to leave. Tiffany's eyes were bright. She looked at me as if daring me to shrink. I didn't. I took a breath that went all the way down. I pulled a keyring from my pocket. It jingled. The keys were new. They had that fresh from the machine edge. On the tag, in blue marker, a scribble, Ramirez Protective. A date. I looked at her and then at the room and said, "Steady, without you, I finally have nothing missing." The quiet that followed was good quiet. The kind that lets words find chairs. Even Tiffany blinked. She laughed once, short and mean, and sat down hard enough to make the chair reconsider its contract. Brad cleared his throat. "So that's a no?" "That's a no," I said. "Not because of pride. Because I'm done renting my spine." I thanked them again for the back pay. I suggested they hire 2 guards per shift and a consultant to audit the technology. I recommended reissuing every gate code and retraining on logs. I promised to submit a list of improvements. Now that I wasn't their employee, my advice sounded expensive rather than insubordinate. Funny how that works. I walked out of the clubhouse into Florida sun you could fold into an omelet. Benny was waiting by my van, grin wide. He slapped the side panel where my temporary magnet now read Ramirez Protective, Residential Small Business Security. My friend's handprint left a dusty badge. "Took you long enough," he said. "Had to finish my exit interview," I said. We drove to the printer to order real decals. We swung by Locksmith and I bought more key blanks than any one man has business buying. I signed a lease on a tiny office in a strip mall between a vape shop and a store that sells salt lamps and wisdom. The landlord looked at my shoulders and gave me a discount in exchange for a presence in the evenings. I nodded. A presence is what I have. The calls started by noon. Residents who couldn't look me in the eye yesterday wanted appointments. They wanted cameras mounted that couldn't be blinded with a pinch of tape. They wanted advice on locks and alarms and where to put the dog bed for optimal bar coverage. They wanted a person they knew to fix the holes they hadn't noticed. I scheduled them all. Not out of revenge. Out of math. You build a business with a ledger and a list and a lot of yes. Benny set up the invoicing program while I sketched a quick website that said exactly what I do and none of what I don't. That evening, I drove back through Regency Oaks. This time I rolled through the resident lane, the one that opens for people the system trusts. I waved at the booth. The new guard waved back, sheepish. I didn't make him squirm. He has a job to do. We both did. I pulled up to my house and parked. Tiffany sat on the porch steps with a suitcase I recognized from our honeymoon. It looked smaller now. Or maybe I finally saw it. She stood as I walked up. "So that's it?" she asked. "You made your choice," I said. "You made yours," she replied. "Enjoy your little company." I pictured the van with its blank panels, the keyrings, the invoices lined up like soldiers. Little, sure. For now. I didn't bother telling her that greatness often starts with a fold-out table and a receipt scanner. She wouldn't hear it from me. Maybe she'd read it in a magazine someday beside a photo of a man with a new haircut and an old smile. She wheeled the suitcase past me. For a second, I thought about stopping her. About begging. About all the romantic scenes where someone runs down a driveway and confesses. Then I pictured her laughing at my van in a year if I failed. I pictured me laughing in my van in a year if I didn't. There's a peace in choosing the challenge you want instead of the one that wants you. After she left, I stood in the foyer and listened to the quiet. It wasn't empty. It was clean. I sat on the couch and put my feet on the coffee table in a way she always said made me look like a teenager. Maybe I am one again in this world, starting over, overconfident enough to believe I can do the thing everyone says is hard and therefore not for you. My phone buzzed. It was Sergeant Wilkes. "We've booked McMullen," he said. "Recovered items match 4 of the thefts. We'll keep you posted." "Appreciate it," I said. "You did good work," he added. "Maybe you should bring that talent our way." "I am," I said, surprising myself. "Just not how you mean." He chuckled. "Fair enough. Stay reachable." I called my mother. She told me she was proud and to eat real food. I called my father. He told me a joke about a cop and a raccoon that didn't quite land but earned points for effort. I called Benny to confirm the morning schedule. We had 3 installs before lunch and a consultation after. That's a business day. That's a beginning. I slept well that night. Not deep. Not long. Well. I woke before the alarm, brewed coffee, and loaded the van with care. Ladder, toolboxes, cable spools, camera housings wrapped like gifts no one wanted for Christmas until they did. I wore a polo with my name stitched above my heart and a pair of work pants that could take a dozen scrapes and keep their dignity. I tucked the new keyring into my pocket and it settled against my leg with a weight I liked. Driving through town in a van you owned is something to your posture. I sat taller. I waved at a school bus and met it. At the first house, a young couple answered in matching slippers. They had a baby that sneezed and terrified them with her own competence. They looked at me like help showed up. I did the consult and spoke without selling because selling is what you do when you want to leave. Helping is what you do when you want to stay. By noon, I had 2 cameras up and an alarm panel mounted in the laundry room where the homeowner could reach it while holding a basket. I labeled wires and left a laminated quick guide because I respect people's time and panic levels. Benny handled the ladder like it owed him money. We ate sandwiches on the curb and laughed about high school until a sprinkler reminded us we were in Florida and water loves a punchline. In the evening, I drove by Regency Oaks one more time. The sunset did that orange-pink thing Instagram would approve if it had a soul. The gate glittered. The guard waved. I waved back without thinking. Healthy muscle memory. I pulled into our street and parked. I unlocked my front door. My home greeted me with the hum of appliances and the click of a thermostat adjusting. No voices. No velvet pouches. No detective's cologne. My laptop pinged. An email from Brad. They'd contracted an outside firm to audit security. They wanted to hire me as a consultant for implementation. I read it twice. Then 3 times. I smiled. Not because I needed their redemption arc. Because money is money, and if I'm going to harden the ship that almost threw me overboard, I'm going to charge market rate plus hazard for HOA meetings. I replied with a polite acceptance and a schedule link. I also attached a list of recommendations, bullet-pointed, friendly, firm. Do the work, fix the holes, trust people who show you how. Then I closed the laptop and stepped out onto the driveway. The air smelled like cut grass and salt and second chances. I took the new keys from my pocket and let them jingle. They didn't sound like prison or permission. They sounded like possibility. A neighbor walked by with a golden doodle. The dog pulled toward me with the determination of a friend who knows what socks you're wearing. The neighbor paused, cheeks pink. "Tony," she said, "I'm sorry for you know." "It's okay," I said. "It's not," she said. "I was ugly." "You were scared," I said. "It makes people ugly. Then they get a chance to choose again." She nodded and wiped her eyes. The dog licked my hand like he had waited his whole life for this approval. Maybe he had. Maybe we all had. I looked at the van. I looked at the keys. I looked at my hands. Big hands. Steady. Lighthouse hands, sure. Also builder hands. That's the thing nobody tells you. You can watch all day. Sometimes you have to pick up the hammer. The next morning, I taped a business card to the guard booth window. Ramirez Protective. Underneath, in smaller font, we install trust. Corny? Maybe. True? I intend to make it so. When I climb the ladder now, I keep laughing at the part of my story where the detective tried to steal my life one velvet box at a time. It almost worked. That's the joke. Here's the punchline: I see everything. Not because I stand in a booth. Because I decided to look at my own life like it was worth protecting. People ask me if I'm mad at Tiffany. I tell them the truth. I'm not mad. I'm grateful. Sometimes the person who burns your bridge lights your way. Sometimes the person who says "without me you're nothing" hands you the exact silence you needed to hear your own voice. That voice says, "Build." So I do. Thank you for listening my story. If you want more raw, real, and gripping stories like this one, subscribe to the AEN Stories channel. Your support keeps these stories alive.